Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we are here for a budget workshop. We will start out with miscellaneous. Heather, all you.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, have a good night. We are looking at miscellaneous, and that begins on page 75 and 76 of your budget book. We have an overall decrease here of $183,028, or just shy of 18%. Just as a reminder, we've already reviewed the fringe benefit portion of those, or what's included in this section of the budget. That was on during the workshop when we discussed the personal services. So it kind of just leaves a few left. The first one being parochial school busing. Had an increase of $2,700. We had kind of two cost drivers there. The first being increase in fuel costs that we've kind of seen elsewhere, as well as a small increase in the contract with Western Main Transit. Just as a reminder, or at least some information for the new council, we use an equivalent of 1.5 buses per day for the 175 or so school days. They do 4 runs per day, and then the run to St. Dom's is 100% paid for by St. Dom's. So that's not a cost to the city at all. The insurance category, which is kind of the next division under, on the top of page 75, had an increase of $22,453. The non-fringe benefit portion of the fringe coverage rose by $14,467. The driving cost driver for that would be the auto insurance, kind of no pun intended, of $21,000. And we have a self-insurance portion that we've seen that we're starting to pay more and more of our deductibles and so forth. So we did kind of fund a $3,500 self-insurance appropriation this year to cover those. Again, for the new council, we participate in the Maine Municipal Association's risk pool for insurance and property and casualty. One of the things that they're very good about is not only holding the line as much as they can on costs, but also if we add assets or so forth in the year, they do not charge us to the next full cycle. And they have been providing pretty regular dividend checks, annual dividend checks, and this past year we received $27,367 worth of rebates or dividends back.
They also are very knowledgeable of the Maine Torts Claim Act, which is not always the case with other private insurers, so that they're right on top of what the city is and is not liable for under Maine state law.
And I often get the question, what is inland marine coverage? So I'll address that right out of the gate. That is considered our movable equipment. That's not classified as vehicles. So no, we don't have any tugboats or anything like that out there. So we've already discussed the retirement category. As a reminder, that had a decrease of $270,800. Workers' compensation, which is the last category on that page, had a decrease of $1,500, and that was pretty much all in the unemployment category. At the top of the next page, we have our dues and donation classification. We had a decrease of $120. The dues account is comprised of the Maine Municipal Association for $33,750. And our membership to the Androscoggin Valley Council of Governments for $26,750. The cash donations that have been included in your budget are $10,000 for the 2019 Liberty Festival. This amount was increased by $1,400 in the last fiscal year. It also includes $5,780 for the state-required cemetery flags that we put out on Memorial Day. There was a price increase there of $500 based upon the cost of the flags. And then we rebate a portion of our snowmobile registrations to the Hillside Snowmobile Club in the amount of $3,667. They get the $6.62 state fee for every snowmobile that's registered. So we actually reimburse the actual registration costs, but this is kind of the good estimate that we've been using. We had additional cash requests made from Community Health and Counseling of $150, Healthy Equity Alliance for $750, the Farmers Market Voucher Program for veterans and seniors for $500, and the Life Flight Foundation for $2,000. As it stands, those amounts have not been included in the budget. You did receive,
And for the new counselors, we haven't funded cash requests like that in the past.
not for
Since
a
I've been on
very
the
long
council,
time,
right, okay,
yes.
thanks.
We do have, as part of your budget package, you have a list of nonprofit requests. Those requests represent in-kind services. That may include foregone overtime for the police, fire, and public works, as well as maybe a waiver of fees, depending on, what they need. So that list was provided. If you look at that, the total in-kind services, including overtime, is $40,841.45. So that is very consistent to,
I think they may have the one with the wrong number. You have the one with that, yeah, you have the wrong, they have this one.
well, that's, you are looking at $54,241?
Yes.
Okay, so that includes all of the cash donations.
Okay.
I'm only looking at what we are considering in-kind services.
Can you say that number again?
$40,841.45.
Thank you.
And we'll kind of massage this a little bit next year.
Right.
So that is the amount that, again, that represents, Public Works doing traffic, police doing traffic, security, anything like that. Waiver of fees are pretty much the two driving forces of those. Those numbers are very similar. As in past years, you will have the overtime obviously indexed a bit based upon salary adjustments and so forth. And those amounts are built into the budget estimates as they stand.
Where is the cash requests listed or anywhere?
We're in the dark blue.
They're in the first column there.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Colors didn't work for me here.
So the next category.
Everybody all set on these?
Yeah, right.
Before we jump too far ahead?
What does the light blue mean? On Pride LA
Were
and
those new requests?
Sunday Indie Market?
Yes, those are new requests this year. And the dark blue obviously has the cash request.
Are any of those also new in addition to being cat?
The requests may be similar to what they've had in the past, but we have not funded them with the exception of the Liberty Festival.
Thank you.
So moving on to page 76, the tax sharing with Auburn. That rose by $7,768. That's the agreement the city has with the city of Auburn for the Monte Hydro facility that requires us to pay 17.5% of our share of the taxes. The value increased by $2 million in FY17, so the whole value of the Monte Hydro is $36,393,200. So we estimate it, this will be tweaked based upon the final tax rate, but the budget as it stands was using a tax rate of $28.75. The reserve for salary, we've discussed in the past, that had a decrease of $201,876. Remember, that's made up of two components. One is the enterprise overhead charge that we get as a credit for $300,000, and then we have the reservation as it stands right now for $50,000. The last category is the other miscellaneous. We have an increase here of $10,000. Just to kind of review what's in this category, though, other fees includes things like the annual audit for the city at $26,385. We have to have an actuarial evaluation for our pension plans. That costs $3,200. We also have a contingency for equipment replacement for $7,000. That was pulled and moved to the fund balance as needed. And it includes some minor things in contractual services like our CAFR award fee, the county registry recording of deeds, and so forth. The $10,000 increase represents an additional line item budgeted for recruitment and replacement efforts as we have some of our positions turning over and retiring. We may have to advertise in professional publications and so on and so forth. We may end up having to play travel costs and so forth, so we at least built something in the budget to support that. So I'm happy to say we've officially gone through the budget.
Ready to vote?
No. So on your place settings, I passed out kind of where we are now based upon what counselors have put on the list, what I have for adjustments so far, kind of where we are for what's being charged to fund balance. And also the last thing included in there, which I will kind of summarize for you, is the Finance Committee's recommendation. And somebody must have a highlighted version of it. Either that or I already gave it away already.
I thought I was privileged.
And no, here we go. I was going to say, no, I didn't do that.
Oh. Little highlight? Oh.
No, that's, I found it, thank you.
Oh, the other.
Yes, the other highlighted. So, as we stand right now, there are 13 items that were put on the list initially. And I have to give Councilor Ray credit because there was kind of a tag team effort with Councilor Cloutier on the election. So she initially talked about flexing polling hours, but after Kathy, the city clerk, had provided some various explanations, she's since kind of pulled that off the list. What is still on the list related to elections is increasing their stipends from $50 to $75 at an increased cost of $4,250. You will see when we get to the proposed adjustments, I have reduced that by $1,000 because I think there's some money in there, some excess temporary wage money that we could use to offset that. So it won't have as large of a impact. Councilor LaJoy asked to put the contract snow plowing for the municipal buildings. That includes the library, city hall, violations bureau, police, and so forth. That had a total package value of $11,500. Councilor Bouchard.
No. Mayor Bouchard.
Oh, sorry. I have to say, that's the first time I've done that. So.
You get a pass.
My apologies.
Yeah, the category ought to change.
So, had recommended funding the recreation van through fund balance, which we have moved that over and is included as part of the calculations there. Councilor Lyson asked about the impact of additional Saturday pool hours. I know there was a series of emails that kind of described in depth what the hours are, what we're doing now, and so forth. And then the value of adding each Saturday at this point is $535 per Saturday, assuming we can get lifeguards later in the season to safely staff that. Councilor Lyson also inquired about offering open gym times at the Armory. The information has been provided. I know Jason has kind of tweaked it a little bit, and he is definitely looking for that. He just wants to make sure he has building monitors in place to adequately secure and watch over the building.
And where is that information?
That was sent via email.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Bouchard asked about the savings in adding the additional radio read towers for the water, and actually it impacts water, sewer, and stormwater as well. They're anticipating averaging about 3 to 4 weeks per quarter savings doing that. You're not picking up any cash savings because that labor will be redirected to other purposes.
So additional service in the water sewer side.
Or efficiencies, correct.
Efficiencies. And can that be done out of fund balance as well?
No, because that's the utilities.
Can it be done from the utilities fund
Yes.
balance?
Yes.
And is there enough in the utilities fund balance to do that?
We can evaluate that. We may be able to straddle it over 2 fiscal years based upon when our start time is, so it won't provide so much of an impact.
And you can break that up over water and sewer, so.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Councilor Cloutier asked about Museum LA. They are here tonight to do a presentation after the budget discussions. Mayor Bouchard asked about asked to put the fleet manager, IT coordinator for the police department on. The net impact after the police chief indicated the savings and repairs to vehicles of $18,000 of that position, including fringe benefits, is $50,167. The battalion chief for fire, less his vehicle of $40,000. If the council approves that position, that is definitely a fund balance candidate, so we don't need to put that on the tax rate as well.
But just the vehicle.
Just the vehicle, not the position. So the net impact of that, it brings that position to $123,913. Mayor Bouchard also asked the civil document server to be put on the list and to evaluate the furloughing of the 2 part-time workers. The net impact of that is $25,866. I will say that's probably at a high amount. That's assuming full boat on the fringe benefits. That's kind of the weird one based upon what the 2 part-timers are taking and so forth. Councilor Lyson asked the planning position to be placed on the list. That had a value of $83,132. And part of the Public Works Committee, the rumor has it, is going to ask the senior principal clerk's position, which is Dave Jones' #1 position, to be evaluated, and that had a value of $56,736. So
Certainly none of these are on.
that's what the next page is for. So if you look at this, the second sheet kind of gives you kind of where we are and what it would look like if we funded all of these requests. So the top portion, to kind of go down through there, adjustments that I'm proposing, obviously we have the reduction of the Violations Bureau of about $70,000. We've offset that with revised estimates of auto excise tax and state revenue sharing. You've all received word that the school committee has elected to fund about $20,000 of the finance department's overhead costs for doing their bank reconciliations, bond sales, things like that. So we would be increasing estimated revenues by $95,000. Expenditures that we would be decreasing include the principal and interest payment that we talked about early on. It includes a revised budget for the Violations Bureau. So where you see that building vacant, that all relates to the Violations Bureau. And then part of the new programs and service for the fire records management system. We've deemed that can be funded through fund balance. It's appropriate. But there is a savings in what the 911 center charges the fire department for the IMC charges. So we are taking that credit here of $56.74. So we are reducing expenditures by $765,883. So what that does is take our city side of the tax rate from the current $16.99 that was in the budget document that you started with down to $16.54, or a 6-cent increase. It takes the total budget, or I'm sorry, the total tax rate from $29.14 to $28.68. That also includes the 1 penny reduction on the school side for the adult ed programming. So to Councilor's license question, the chunk underneath there looks at all the items that were on your list. That would increase the budget by $354,564. So going through that same exercise, it increases the tax rate back up to 24 cents. The overall tax rate is increased by 85 cents to 28.87. So we'll let you mull that over a little bit.
I guess I'll start with a question, probably for Ed. From an HR standpoint, how 911 is the need on that senior principal clerk? As I understand, Public Works has a lot of different codes and not something that your average HR person can enter.
Public Works has a very complicated payroll system. There's no question about it because of the nature of the work that they do, plus all of the various union requirements for stipends and additional pay and stuff like that. So there needs to be someone over there who is competent at maintaining payroll records. They are struggling these days, given limited staff and some issues regarding the individuals in those positions. So it is a problem. I think Dave Jones is here. He can probably talk more directly about the nature of the problem than I can. But I know that, believe it or not, given the choice between, another plow operator or this position, he'd take this position.
And if I could echo, because I have a little bit more familiarity from the payroll side of things, there's two components to, actually there's three components to this position. So they process the normal weekly payroll. So that includes using approximately anywhere, our city pay codes run about 400 different pay codes. So that gives you kind of an example of one. You're doing daily time entry. So this person is taking the information from the foreman, which is a non-manual system, putting it in a system on a daily basis. This position has to deal with shift differential. It has to deal with overtime. If a storm, like we saw this year, where we had a Christmas storm, we had a Christmas Eve storm, and we had a New Year's Day storm. So those are all double overtime and a half in some instances, depending on what shift they're working. And those, because they cross into from one shift to another overnight, you have to stop them and start them from a daily time entry system. So that's kind of that silo. The second silo is she also is in charge of all the work order entry for labor. So when we're looking at charging out for street sweeping versus highway versus snow removal, that all funnels through this position. The third component is this person is in charge of the municipal garage inventory and charging parts out to the various department and the outside services from a fleet inventory standpoint as well. So it makes it really hard to kind of keep somebody or pull somebody in from dispatch. I have a person in my office that has gone over there and kind of learned, but if you're not working fluently in it on a routine basis, it's very difficult to stay up to speed on that. Dave, do you have anything to add?
course.
I figured he would. Give him the out. I still think we need a mirror up there.
Yeah, we do.
When I brought this up to the council, when we had the initial budget hearings, I told you at that point, I considered this a must-fund item. Nothing has changed my mind about that. This is a must-fund item. The individual who does all this work for us was admitted to the hospital this last weekend and hasn't been in all week. We've been flailing over there trying to keep up with getting the payrolls done and stuff. We used to be able to rely upon the finance department to back us up on this stuff. Quite frankly, Heather's folks have been overextended already, and they can no longer provide that backup service. This is a must-fund position in order to ensure that our employees get paid on time and correctly. There is no question about it. This needs to get funded.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Jones while he's up here? Okay. So my next question will be more directed at Chief O'Malley. And my question would be, if you had to pick one of the two that you have on this list, is there one that you would give preference to, and why?
And of the two, we're talking about the fleet manager and the civil document server?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the least financial impact would be furloughing the two part-time parking enforcement and then having the process server parking enforcement officer who kind of can cross-train and do both jobs. I think that'll have a bigger impact on the business owners down here on Lisbon Street, and listening to their complaints about the lack of enforcement, I think that would be the best way to improve that. If you speak to my officers that work for me, they would prefer to have the IT fleet manager in terms of dealing with the day-to-day equipment issues that come up in the cruisers, because we have so much technology now, even over the last 5 years that has changed, and we just spend so much time driving cruisers to Rumford, tying up officers. It's difficult for me to choose, but if I'm going to go the financial route, it's easiest, I guess, for the city to do the civil process server. But if I had my wish list, it would be to have the fleet manager.
Any questions for the chief?
I might add to that, if I would, and I'm sure the chief would agree. Right now, based upon the violation and the parking enforcement we have right now, there seems to be some gaps, which is why we're getting some of the complaints that potentially the $25,000 could be easily made up with the revenue stream as well, with additional or more steady and regular enforcement.
Okay, so I think that concludes my questions on the list. For me personally, I really like seeing that we've been able to knock this from 12 cents down. Well, actually, I think it started at 51 on the city side.
55.
And the delayed payment knocked it down to 12. I'm happy to see it at 6. It's about 6 cents higher than I want to see. But I'm very happy to see that. I would not be happy with 24 at all. Looking through the wish list here, I don't see anything on here that we can't make a really good case for. There's probably 3 dozen things other departments want or asked for that we could also make a really good case for. My personal opinion, I would seriously consider funding everything on this list except the planner and the battalion chief. And the reason on the battalion chief, not that I don't think it's needed, because I think it's absolutely necessary in fire, but we've done a lot for fire the last couple of years in adding positions, and some other departments have not seen that. This may be a very high priority for me next year, to be very honest. On the planning side, I know we have some people who are passionate about planning. I think we just increased the planning capacity in that department by hiring a great hire, the new planning director, and potentially filling his spot with another planner. And we also have, I believe, something in the hopper for rent registration to help that department as a whole. So I would probably hold off on that. Personally, that would be the 2 that I would knock off of that list.
We have, we're in transition up there, as you all know. We've been replacing people. Our building inspector and our housing inspectors pretty much have been turning over. So we have a bunch of new people in there. So it's going to take a little bit of time, I think, for people who we have brought on to staff to pick up the system and get up to speed and do those kinds of things. But I think code we've strengthened over the last few years considerably. I'm hoping that with David Hediger taking over the planning and code director's position, that he'll be able to devote more time to planning than perhaps Gil was able to over the last few years, particularly where we're dealing with so many issues in terms of dilapidated housing in the community that had to be addressed. We will be replacing David. It's still not a strong planning effort, but I'm hoping there would be a little more time to be able to be devoted to planning. I will still say you're not going to find many communities of our size and nature in the country with the limited planning staff that we have. So,
Councilor Cloutier?
So can I just make a recommendation based upon who's here in the audience, that because general budget discussions are last on the agenda, that we move to the presentation from Museum LA, then talk about the nonprofit stuff, because I think there's also a lot of people in the audience who are here for the in-kind, and then come back to the general budget discussions, because I feel like we could really get in the weeds here, and I don't want those folks to have to stay unless they want to.
Yep. I know we've kind of already done the nonprofits other than Museum LA, so I guess I would defer to the council. Are there any particular questions you have of those nonprofits? That way,
No, I was just thinking
Okay.
that my inclination is to move ahead as we have in the past
Yep.
without the cash donations. I don't know
Okay.
how others feel.
so I think
So
then
if we want to
that,
go back to item 1 and as we
Yeah,
kind of sunset
that would be
that?
great, sorry.
Okay,
Well,
thank
if
you.
there's nonprofits here that are requesting cash, I would like to hear from them
Sure,
briefly. So.
sure.
Okay. So is anyone here from Community Health Counseling requesting $150 that would like to speak? Going once. Okay, moving on. Healthy Equity Alliance requesting $750. Is there anyone here from Healthy Equity Alliance? Strike 2. Farmers Market Voucher Program. Is there anyone here from the Farmers Market who would like to speak in regards to the voucher program?
So Sherry, you can just step up to the microphone.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors. So I'll just spend a few minutes. There was a...
Just for the camera, name, address. Thank you.
Yep, sure. Sherry Blumenthal. I live at 2 Swell Lane, and I am the manager of the Lewiston Farmers Market, and I also work at the St. Mary's Nutrition Center. And so very quickly, the Farmers Market runs a few different programs with two main goals in mind. One is increasing food access for different communities within the city. And then another is to just draw different customers to the farmers market and support them in enjoying and being able to take access of what the farmers market has to offer. One of those programs has been the Seniors and Veterans Voucher Program, which offers seniors and veterans a $2 coupon once a month just for being themselves. They just come up to our information booth. This was a really popular program last year. We saw high use. We were also, through our other food access initiatives through the Nutrition Center, it's also become aware, we've become more aware at the need for more access opportunities, particularly for seniors in our community. So it's seniors over 63, particularly low-income seniors. And we'd like to see this as an opportunity to support that community and accessing fresh fruits and vegetables more easily. And so the request would go towards increasing the amount of vouchers and giving them out more regularly. The Nutrition Center, through its other food access initiatives, has the ability, which partners and supports the farmers market, has the ability to do outreach and promotion and target it. Part of the idea is that the city of Auburn provided a set amount of funding last year as well to its senior residents to get vouchers at the farmers market there, and we partner with a vendor who runs that market. So that was why I thought perhaps I would put the request forth to the city to support this program. So is there any questions about it?
Questions from the council? Thank you. And is there anybody here from Life Flight requesting $2,000? Life Flight. Okay. So there's the public comment on cash requests. Any comments, general cash requests from the council?
No, I mean, I think that I would support the farmer's market. It's a low impact, but again, high utilization, both in seniors and veterans, and I think that's certainly areas that we need to support those people.
If there's something I can just sorry to interrupt to add, is that we would match that $500. So just to say that the city would, so the impact would go further than the 500, just to put that. So we're matching it not only in kind, the same areas as supporting in kind time and doing outreach, but the farmers market would then match that amount to give out. So it
Councilor
would go a little
Marcotte.
further than that.
So, looking at 500 here, and you're saying a match of 500?
Yeah, the farmers market would match up. We said 300, but I think we can match. We've gotten a lot of support.
And earlier, I heard that you said $2 vouchers, so would that serve 2,000 people?
We would increase the voucher amount to, we would look at the budget and either we would do $2 more often or we would do $5 once a month. So I'd have to play with the numbers and see, but,
I
you
was
know.
multiplying by 2, I should have divided, so that'd be serving 500 people, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Council Cludier.
So Sherry, have you reached out to other organizations like Seniors Plus or Veterans Inc. to see if they would partner with you?
No, but seed money is always a great way to go out to other organizations and say, hey, look, we've got just a little bit and here's how you can continue to stretch that effort.
Yeah, so the match would also, though, function in that way?
Yep. And the city in general does, is a tremendous supporter of the farmers market over the years, and, we appreciate it, and and we share that out readily, and we would just continue to share that out, and the city would, be listed very clearly as a supporter of this program, just as the city of Auburn was for the one that happened at the farmers market, so.
Anyone else on the council? Thank you, Sherry. Okay. Well, any other discussion on those numbers? Councilor Lyson would love to see that
Yeah.
added to the budget. Any comments? Informal polling.
Yeah, maybe we'd want to do an informal polling.
Thumbs up, thumbs down?
Can I just ask something
Just did.
additional? So we're saying that we haven't done the dark colored requests. We haven't done those before.
We haven't funded cash requests.
In a very long time.
Yes.
For Edward, maybe. So do we
When
want
the
to?
last time we did?
How long have you been here?
A little over 8 years.
Okay, so I'm thinking it's been at least 10.
Oh,
Okay.
good, it wasn't my fault.
No.
And so do we want to talk about setting a precedent or anything before we discuss specific requests?
Possibly a policy?
I do like policy. I think it makes our jobs a lot easier in the long run.
So the ones that were in light blue are
I mean,
part-
I can see good
Sorry.
reason to support, any of these organizations.
Or any of the ones in our community?
Right.
There's so many worthy ones.
Question. You said the light blue were new ones, but they're a new part of the budget, though?
Those are in-kind services, not cash. That's the
And
distinction.
they're new, but they're new this year?
Correct.
Okay, great.
I will point out that, I don't know how many requests the city used to get, but I would anticipate at a time that the city did more funding, we probably received considerably more requests.
Yes.
That's normally what, my experience is that's normally what drives communities to stop funding agencies because of the number of requests that come in.
It could also be that we stopped funding them, and so people stopped making the request, right?
And can I ask, for the Liberty Festival, is there, it's under the city events policy, and that's why we fund that? Did I make that up?
No, I read that.
No, that's right.
It's somewhere, right?
I think that has just historically been something that the city has supported
I think it's in a policy.
because of the 4th of July festival.
I think
and the celebration.
and where it's located.
In the Veterans Park,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
We have funded the Liberty Festival in some fashion in the 28 years I've been here. So there is a long-standing funding there.
If we were to fund this $500 request, could we do that from fund balance?
No.
Okay. All right, one more time with the thumbs so we can move on.
Okay.
Guess that's a no on
Okay.
500 here. Moving on. If you'd like to do Museum LA,
Certainly.
if Kristen's happy with the,
Not happy, but
with moving on.
moving on.
Okay. Serve at your pleasure, Madam President.
Good evening. Rachel DeGrosier, 18 Melody Lane, Lewiston, Maine. Citizen returning home this year, and Executive Director of Museum LA. I'd like to, John, you want to?
Sure. My name is John Cleveland. I'm the Chair of the Board of Trustees for Museum LA. And I'm happy to be here because Lewiston is actually my original hometown.
And I have my assistant here, Kathy Begvar, helping. I'd like to just start by giving you a little PowerPoint to show you and bring you up to date on what has been going on at Museum LA, if that's all right. So we've come a long way since I first started. A lot has been happening, and as you can see, and we cut it short tonight to show you tonight, but I just wanted to kind of go over a little bit to bring you up to date on where we are with the project, because it's so important for the future. For years, we worked to save the history of our communities. At first, it seemed that the most important was to save the things. We started with saving the looms and machinery and the patterns. However, it soon became clear that even more important were the stories and voices of the people who actually lived those times in Lewiston and Auburn. We were inspired to save these stories at the right time, because since then, I've attended more wakes and funerals than I care to remember. We started as a museum of textiles, but soon we found we needed to expand, and we became a museum of work and community, because telling the story of work was so intertwined with that of community, we just couldn't ignore it. It became evident, reading through almost 300 oral histories that we have gathered, that two major themes ran through most of the stories we were gathering. First, even though many of our ancestors didn't have much education, they were very creative and very often innovators themselves. Second is about how big we were in music. Did you know that in the 40s and 50s, we had the highest number of musicians per capita of population in the United States right here in Lewiston and Auburn? To me, that was amazing when we learned that. This is when we decided to not just be about the past, but use that amazing past to inspire the future. Programs started including not only history, but what our history taught us, where it has led us today, and how it can help us move into the future. Museum LA is here to help our communities reclaim the greatness and pride we once enjoyed, and to recognize that we're still great today. To bring our story into the present, we are creating a new permanent shoe exhibit that will now showcase 5 great shoe companies still existing in LA and Maine: Rancourt Shoe, the Globe Fireman Boot, the New Balance sneaker, the LL Bean boot, and Quaddy moccasins. We're hoping to have that ready at the beginning of June. Our main Innovation Expo this year is bringing more than 50 exhibitors together on May 19th. This expo will showcase businesses which you probably drive by each day and don't realize they are doing amazing and inventive things within their own walls. We're connecting innovative businesses with the innovative groups of students so they can share and hopefully see that there still is opportunity here. It's a free family fun day for all of them to learn that great things are still happening here. We have been meeting and continue to meet with leaders, youth, community members, educators, to ask what it is that they want in their future new museum. We wanted to stay in a mill, and we definitely wanted to stay downtown. Our new site at 1 Beach Street on the riverfront accomplishes both of those. Having had to demolish 60% of the building because of damage during the 1945 fire, we now have the original 1850 building upon which we can wrap around a new structure, perfect to meld the old with the new, and even more perfect, it is all facing our river and our park. To our young people in our community, we say we're listening and we want to hear more, because they're telling us that they want to see a little something modern down there so they can start putting their own character onto their community. They've also told us they want us to be a center for the community. And the more we listen, we hear they want us to be kind of like a living room of the community, where they can just come and hang out, alone or with family and friends, to not only learn, but to live together, work, and even just play. We've transferred our major gallery space to our school children for the middle and high schools to participate in our kids as curators. The students themselves work with us to learn how to develop, create, and install an exhibit. This year, for the 3rd time, Auburn Middle School created Hidden Treasures, where they worked with various artifacts from our collections They did the research, the writing, the artwork, worked as teams, created multimedia, installed their own exhibit, and on opening night, they became the curators and teachers of their own community history, and they learned their community history even more. You should have seen their pride. In May, for their second year, Lewiston High School, the students are installing their own exhibit. So in the new museum, we're planning a couple of galleries specifically for community use, not only for our children, but for our local and cultural organizations that may have a story to tell and have no place to tell it. Since we opened, we have received people from 43 states and 12 countries. Those from afar leave in awe at the beautiful history and community that we live in. They stay in our hotels, eat in our restaurants, and go to other events. The local people who come in usually leave having taken pride back in their community. That we love to see. I say that our museum is here to remind people of how great and amazing a people and place we were, but even more important, that we still are great and amazing in every way, and we can't say that enough. Museum LA has been through very hard times. Even at one point, we weren't sure we would be able to continue. Through sound management and the spirit of frugality of our ancestors, and by the bootstraps like we know our grandparents did, we were able to continue, although on a very small scale and few hours. Through perseverance and making every penny count, we have turned those times around. We're not there yet, believe me, but we are still making every penny count, have increased to almost full hours, are developing new and fun history programs, and creating great exhibits. Presently, we're reviewing all our systems from financial to governance to educational to collections to visitor services to prepare us for the next phase of who we need to become as a strong, vibrant, and unique museum. Financial stability for us is always in the forefront as a priority. We have already hired 2 young professionals with master's degrees in museum studies, which is, we're bringing in new young professionals. We have also already spent $1.5 million on the new site and close to $5.5 million total in operations, 85% to 90% of which has been spent with our local businesses. Why is it critical for us to move now? First, we're being squeezed out of the Bates Mill of our present quarters. In a way, that's good because businesses like Baxter Brew are expanding on the right, and Eclair and Pastries has just opened on the left. But with that, we've lost half of our storage space, and that was very hard for us. Second, we're also losing important artifacts because we don't have a safe, climate-controlled, and secure area to keep the valuable items. On the bright side, though, we have saved about 500 pieces of artwork done, original artwork done by our mill workers, 200 silk screens, and brought back over 200 original bedspreads of different patterns. These 3 collections are now becoming national treasures, and they reside right here in Lewiston and Auburn. Third, more and more people and organizations are asking us to partner and collaborate with them because they see the value of our participation growing. Fourth, we're unable to develop new programs that could be of extreme importance, like one that we've been asked for and we'd love to do for autistic kids. Because of the oils and such on the floors, we can't do it. We could be doing more with Alzheimer's because we've seen what it can do for them when they come and visit. It's amazing to watch. Fifth, we want to develop new income streams to help move us to greater sustainability. Not being in our own space, we don't have the freedom to make the decisions that need to be made to take advantage of opportunities that arise by developing new products and creating licensing agreements. So where do we stand in our planning? In late 2016, we received a $1 million anonymous leadership gift towards the new museum. This gave us the impetus to get started on moving our project forward. We have reinstated our building committee and a capital campaign committee, helping us to get the campaign itself ready. We have hired EXP Studios to work in figuring space needs for exhibits and identifying core stories that are important for us to tell, such as textiles, shoes, brick, immigration, the river, water power, the canal system, innovation, success and creativity in Lewiston, music, transportation, and with that, we'll be able to update our interpretive plan. We could go for at least 50 years and not run out of great stories to tell about Lewiston and Auburn, believe me. We can't keep those stories hidden anymore. In your own Riverfront Island master plan, without our asking to be in it, you have Museum LA mentioned several times as extremely important and a catalyst for helping revitalize the downtowns. So we want our museum to become a force for the community and not just a place. I quote Dr. Bernard Lown, inventor, Nobel Peace Prize winner, and a great cardiologist, and one of our very own citizens. When I went to meet with him the first time, he said, he kept looking at me and I thought he was upset by what we were trying to do. He said, "This is unheard of what you're trying to do, Rachel. You're trying to put together a museum to tell the story of the ordinary person and everyday worker, rather than a famous someone or art collection, which would be easy, and you'd be bringing in the funds easy too. But trying to do this from the bottom up to honor the everyday worker, that's going to be very hard. I applaud you and admire what you're doing." Workers we interviewed used to tell me, "Rachel, it was hard work." Hard work never deterred us. We know we're made of good stock. Look at our ancestors. We plan on being part of what's happening today and tomorrow with a historical perspective as we learn from the past together. So I'd like to have John just give a little overview of the request that we're making.
Yes, thank you. We're here this evening to ask for your help. We want your help to keep this wonderful momentum that we've gotten going and the money that we've brought in ourselves. And we're asking for your help to be our partner to make this successful. As you heard, we're planning a major renovation expansion of a property on Beach Street for our new museum building. This next step is absolutely critical in moving forward in a timely way, is to create site plans and a building elevation sketches for the property. That has to be the next important step so we know how to best use that site. It is expected that this phase will cost $150,000. We're asking you for $50,000. We're going to make a similar request to the City of Auburn, and the museum will raise $50,000 for this project. So we're looking to create that partnership three ways. I think there are several reasons why we're asking you to join us in this effort and why it's so important to do it now. It's really important to integrate our site, where the museum building is, with the Riverfront Island master plan that you've developed. So we want to create a partnership with you to make sure that we develop a site plan that in the best possible site plan we can, that's a benefit for all parties. City-owned property really is on many sides of our property right now. On the canal side, that is property that I believe you've recently acquired through Brookfield that you own on that side of the property. Also on the Beach Street end, on Beach Street, portion of that property is either public right-of-way or is owned by a joint Lewiston Auburn agency. We also understand there's some interest in extending the public walkway along the riverfront, which would go across our frontage on the river. We want to work cooperatively in a way to make that work well for the city and the public, as well as to work well for our property as well. So the museum really has a very significant impact here in Lewiston and Auburn in what we do, and in particular on your downtown master plan within that really historic district. We want to make sure that what we develop there makes it as successful for the community as it possibly can. And that has to start with a good site plan on how to use the property so it benefits not only our museum, but all of that public property and private property, so that the community can show what our plans are to potential investors here. And we expect would be impressed by the amount of investment and the kind of activity that we plan to build in that particular spot. So we're really at the next critical stage on developing our building for the community here. This will bring us to our next step to be able to solicit more private funds to invest in the property, to show them what we have in mind, how it will work, and how that investment benefits the community. A task that we don't have, that you will have us as a partner out there as a nonprofit doing as well. So on behalf of the Board of Trustees, I really want to thank you for this opportunity, and I hope that you'll join us in this partnership to make a significant and important development possible right here in Lewiston.
Right now, just to brief you, we've torn down this whole section and this whole section here, so we were able to save the original about 18,000 square feet right here with the front tower. And that was the original 1850 building. So that has now all been stabilized. It has all been, everything else has been demolished. And we have a complete green site. Everything has been cleaned up, from the oil spills to the radiation to everything else that was in there. That's part of the $1.5 million that we've already spent in there. So there's a lot of, we've already worked with Dave Jones from the Public Works, because you're working on the bridge here, which we had a big issue. We weren't able to cross over in here to do construction, so anything that's happening. So I was thrilled when I saw that you were working on the bridge to change that over, because that's badly needed. I don't know if you have any questions, or...
Yeah, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions from the council? Councilor Cloutier.
So, for folks who were here the last time we discussed this, you know, I feel like the way that this sort of showed up on our sort of list of fund balance items was as a capital campaign request. And so I had concerns about that because we don't have a process in place for reviewing capital campaign requests. So after that came up, I reached out to Rachel, who I have worked with at the college for 10 years, and who's very good at being fiscally responsible and using Bates students to do a lot of work. And I'm thank you for presenting, because I think this adds a lot of sort of clarity to that conversation. And when you and I had spoke, you know, you were very clear about this not actually being a capital campaign request.
Right, we haven't started the capital campaign.
Right.
We can't start it until we get this initial work done.
Right. So, and just based upon, you know, the letter that we received today, and the talk of partnership, I mean, it's very clear to me that this is much more about partnership between the two cities and the museum, and that this really sort of sets the stage for that capital campaign, which will come later. And I just, going back to the letter, I want to just, you know, mention that, you know, in talking about site planning and building elevation sketches, that all of those drawings and sketches are also going to be available to the city to sort of help us in thinking about our own planning for the redevelopment of the Riverfront Island Master Plan. So I feel much more comfortable about that, knowing that it's not a capital campaign request. I'd like for us to stop putting it down as a capital campaign request, if we could do that.
We're happy we could clarify that.
Thanks.
We've already started working with different people about the river walk because they need to come right along our river, so our property.
Councilor Marcotte?
Excuse me. Do you have a timeline on the first phase, the planning?
Right now, we're looking at, we met this morning, as a matter of fact, for 3 hours with the exhibit planners. They're going back, and they said that in the next week or two, they're going to come back with those plans, which we'll be able to bring to the building committee. Then they'll be able to start looking to go out and get the people that have to start doing, hire the people that are going to be doing the site planning. So we're looking at a possibility 6 to 8 months of work to get the site planning done.
And when you have that?
But we want
If we
to,
can, once we get
Well-
the funding.
we
If
want
you
to
get the
start that in
funding.
2018, though. We'd like to proceed in 2018.
On the
with-
site plan?
Right, oh, yeah.
Yes.
And once the site planning is completed, then you determine what you'll need to raise for capital investment for the
Right.
project?
Yes,
Right.
that will help inform that, which is very important.
Now, will the site planning lead to how you envision the needs for the building? Because right now, you probably have no idea whether it'll cost $1 million or $10 million to construct out.
Right.
Correct. That's right.
And I heard partnership a couple of times. Are you going to be approaching us for more funds in the future?
We're approaching you tonight.
I would say,
I hope that you will be impressed with what we're doing, because we want to keep you updated in what we're doing in the future. But we want to continue our partnership, absolutely.
Well, I was really impressed with the audiovisual presentation.
Thank you.
And I look at this as seed money to hopefully get more private investment.
Right.
I don't want to be the piggy bank that keeps coming back to for more and more.
we're not planning on that. We're not planning on doing that. I mean, what we'd like to do is keep you posted on what's going on and what the needs are and what our consultants, come up with, because actually, we were pretty excited today, just discussing, and that's why I said we could be talking 50 years and not run out of stories to tell about how great a community we are, because we've got so many stories, and they're all interconnected with national things. We were leaders in so many ways, and we've forgotten that. And that's why I think our museum is here. We need to be reminding everybody that, guys, we were great once, and, we still are. There's amazing things happening here behind closed doors and nobody knows, so.
Wonderful things are happening in the community. You can see it everywhere. There's construction going on, investments are being made. People are seeing Lewiston and Auburn differently than they did. We want the museum to be one of the signatures of that, to show the positive image of these communities, to show our own people why they should be so proud of themselves for what they have done and achieved in the past. And we also want to show that, like any major important metropolitan area in any area, but particularly in Maine, we also want to invest in cultural, historical kinds of institutions that are important on remembering, recalling, and inspiring people for the future. Every important major community has a museum. There is no reason why Lewis and Auburn should not fit into that category.
Any further questions, comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
I'd like to invite you
Yeah.
all to come and really see what's, take a look, because I think you'd be surprised and you'd enjoy it. We'd love to show you around.
Rachel, when it was a shoe exhibit that was coming up, is that,
Yes.
can you share that info with Ed, and then maybe he can send it to all of us, the dates and times and everything?
Okay,
Thank you.
absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
I gotcha. I gotcha.
And that will bring us into the weeds of the general budget discussions. And I think I kind of opened it up with my initial comments. And just for reference, if my math is right, which is always a question mark,
Good thing Heather's here to correct it.
if my math is correct, that would bring us back up to 12 cents if we were to fund everything except the battalion chief and the planner out of the requested list. 12.5 cents is what my math said, but with a potential 1.5 cent offset for the parking. So that could only bring us to 11 cents total. While I do not like seeing an increase of any kind on the city side, I feel like we do have a obligation to the citizens to provide baselines of service on several levels, and I think some of these positions are necessary. I think keeping up with the wages for the voting is essential. I think the contract plowing is a cost savings with workers' comp, and I think some of these other positions are potentially cost saving, and even as Heather indicated, maybe even a revenue stream. She's got her calculator out, so we're going to see how wrong I was. Councilor Lyson?
Yeah, I just wanted, I know we already done thumbs up, thumbs down, but one of the concerns I had, I don't know on the planner position what the salary is on that. I know that this is including, you know, more than salary and benefits, right?
That's correct. It
Okay.
includes
I
what,
ju- Yeah, because I think my vision of the planner would be somewhat of an entry-level position. I mean, you have, I mean, we talk about restoring what was there before. When I was the planning director, we had 4 people in the planning department. And, you know, one is an entry level, and I just think that's a lot more money than an entry level. And again, that skill set, we need somebody who's, you know, doing stuff on the ground so that both David and whoever becomes our deputy director, city planner, can do the bigger stuff as well. And you know, because there's, you know, from development review to just, you know, getting, staffing the planning board, you've got, you know, lots of duties there. So that can be done by a planner.
just to clarify, the actual salary is budgeted at an entry-level salary of $52,000. This is a union position with a ProTech, so that facilitates certain benefits and certain stipends that come along with it, including boot allowance.
You're saying 52 is the entry level for a
52
planner position?
for the planning position. Includes the health insurance and so forth
Right,
with
I
that.
understand,
Yep.
yeah. Thank you.
Councilor Cloutier?
So many things. So, I mean, I see a need for all of these positions, and I think that department heads, and I'm looking at you two in the back, have made, you know, good arguments for all of these things. I am not comfortable with a 24-cent increase on taxes. I would agree with the mayor in that, I'm sorry, Brian Stockdale, we did just settle the fire contract. I feel like, you know, a large part of the tax increase last year was based upon the settling of that contract. And we're going to be negotiating on that again soon. I appreciate Chief O'Malley sort of being honest about, you know, what his thoughts are on the 2 positions that he's talking about. And I feel like the police department consistently comes here and is willing to sort of give something up all the time. And so I really appreciate that. Your predecessor did that as well, and I thought that was, you know, it's really helpful for us. So I, you know, would be in favor in funding that civil document server position, which I think is the one that you weren't, you know, super excited about getting, but that you were accepting of getting. I also think that senior principal clerk, based upon what, you know, Dave Jones said tonight, is really important. And the planner position, you know, as much as I would love to see that, I feel like we are in a place in that department where we're bringing someone with significant planning experience into the, like the director's position of that department. which then opens up a deputy director position, which could also be filled by someone with significant planning experience. We have, we just had a meeting with the Public Health Committee on Tuesday, where we talked about the rental registration program. If that comes into play, that would fund additional code people. So I feel like that department is sort of in a place where things kind of need to shake out enough for us to kind of understand what that's going to look like. And so I would be in favor of, delaying that for a year based upon that $83,000 number.
Would you like to comment on the snow plowing and the temporary wages?
I mean, I'm obviously in favor of those temporary wages. I mean, it's been, what did Kathy say, like 20 years since there's been a raise there. And the contract plowing, I mean, I think that makes good sense based upon what we're looking at in terms of workers' comp claims and our aging workforce in public works.
Thank you, Council. Councilor LaJoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hate to disagree with you, but I'd like to talk about the battalion chief's position, if I may. And the reason I'd like to do that is because, number one, I was the fire chief in the fire department for 12 years, and I know exactly what the chief is going through. When I began my career, I had 3 deputies and an assistant chief, and they were all in charge of a division like training, fire prevention, and so on. Through the years, those positions were eliminated. They were all salaried positions, and they were eliminated, and what happened is a number of those responsibilities went onto the floor to the captains. And over a period of time, in my opinion, it started costing more money for the city, for our taxpayers, than the salary basis that those deputy chiefs were at. So I can see where the chief is coming from. I think that position is extremely important. I believe that it would alleviate quite a bit of pressure from that particular individual, meaning the chief as well as the assistant chief. My former assistant chief, who was the past chief, Paul Leclerc, could attest to the same thing that I'm saying today. So I'm stuck on that position somewhat, and for those particular bases. A comment was made that a lot was done for the fire department last year, and I believe that because I've looked it up and I've researched it, and a lot was done. However, it was done for the floor. It was not done for administration. Administration has been bypassed for at least 10 years. And I think if we don't do it now, I think in the very, very near future, we must address this particular position because I believe it is extremely important. Would you like to add anything, Chief Stockdale?
Can you just run through like the job description for that position again for us as well? Thank you.
The plan would be, currently we have all those duties of those 7 positions or so that have been decreased over the years. A lot of them have been rolled into both places. So currently now with a staff of 77, there's only two managers ultimately, or leaders of the department, myself and the assistant chief. All those duties generally have rolled into our positions. So really what we're looking for this position is somebody to do training in our day-to-day operational pieces. The current standards that we have are all of our members are well over 200 hours, are required 200 hours plus of training every year just to be a minimum. We're really looking at this person to help develop, implement, record keep, because now we don't have that. And with all the OSHA standards, NFPA standards, all the different Bureau of Labor standards, and all these different things that we're required to do, it's incredibly difficult to monitor that. And to have the assistant chief and myself try to roll that into our positions where we're already trying to manage fire inspections and where we're very behind in other pieces, it just doesn't allow us to put the effort we need into that training piece. And that is a safety issue for us, where we want to make sure that the city is getting the best trained and the best qualified firefighters and fire department we can. So to be able to have someone that can manage that and implement and develop, put that together, as well as deal with a lot of our smaller day-to-day operations that the captains don't do. As Councilor LaJoie was speaking about, some of those details rolled into the captain's position and some didn't. So it's this mix where we can have somebody that actually can be front and center, which will allow myself and the assistant chief to do more of our jobs that we're really paid for, without getting bogged down in a lot of the day-to-day swaps, vacation picking, all these other little things that need to happen with the maintenance and all this other parts. So that's really our vision for this position, to relieve some of those pieces.
Questions for the chief?
You mentioned the last time that the battalion chief might help on the captain's side. Am I correct? In which way would that be? How would he? You said he would be, we'll say, in charge of training, as well as, we'll say, fire prevention, as well as other administrative duties, but you said also that he might also help with the captains.
Correct.
And so that the captains could do something else?
Yeah, well, right now, the way the captain system works is a lot of it, since they're union positions, they are contracted with specific duties and those pieces. So a lot of the duties that we're trying to alleviate would be the assistant chief, as well as kind of make that bridge between the captain doing their kind of day-to-day smaller piece and the assistant chief to be able to manage both of those. And to have someone on the floor that day-to-day that can work with the captain to make sure things are actually being done that may be out of the scope from the captain. So it alleviates a lot of issues we have, contractual issues of things that, we need to get done, but it's not necessarily in the contract. How do we make a system that enhances what the captains are doing, alleviates some of the issues we have that with duties that have rolled into the assistant chief, to have an actual person to be able to do those things.
Would the battalion chief have oversight over the men as you do and the assistant chief does?
That would be correct. It'd be a management position. That this person would be not only in charge of the training and the day-to-day operations, but would assist us with the full management of department.
How did you come up with the starting wage? What is the starting wage without the bennies?
I believe, I don't have that number directly in front of me, I believe it was.
I got it, Brian, just a second. We're looking at starting at essentially just around $87,000.
It's
87.
5% higher than the top step captain.
Correct.
Because we have to have.
Is that 5% higher than a captain, including all the overtime that they get?
No, that's 5% higher than the base pay of the captain.
Yeah, one of the difficulties that came about as we eliminated management is, yes, you ended up with this set of duties that have to be done. Some of those duties would normally be done by the people who are the shift leaders, but since they're in the union, that creates some difficulties about them picking up certain functions. So I think more and more has gone to the deputy chief and the chief over time, and the captains have backed off some of that work because, it's difficult. They're in the same group with their subordinates. So, quite honestly, if there's a discipline problem, it doesn't end up at the captain's level, it ends up at the chief's level.
That's correct. So, okay, so I see what you basically put that price tag up there to possibly entice individuals on the floor to move up and go into that position?
Absolutely. It's with
Yeah.
the responsibility of the position, we need to have somebody that,
Okay.
would make enough money to do so.
Yeah, I still believe it's an extremely important position, and it would alleviate quite a load from the management aspect of the workload, as well as the oversight of the department. It's an extremely difficult decision for me to make. If I'm the only one that votes for it, then I have to answer to the taxpayers, I guess. So there's 36,000 of them, and there's only 7 of us here. I'm not sure which numbers are better, right?
Well,
Could we go another year without that position?
Obviously, with a preference, I would say no, but I would believe,
Oh, your honesty,
yeah, I would think that, yes, we could, but I also believe that it's going to get more difficult as I move forward with this. So can we do it? Yes, we could. I would think we can do that. But I would certainly like to say that we'd keep this on the radar to be done as quickly as we possibly could, because it's not going to get easier for us by any means.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Chief Stockdale, while he is up there? Councilor Ray?
So it looks like we're funding, sorry, the fire records management software through fund balance, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and will that help streamline your process for the coming years so that you might have some available time for these duties if we defer for a year?
That would certainly be helpful.
Hopeful.
It's
Okay.
certainly helpful, certainly.
Okay. Feel a little less bad.
Councilor Cludier?
Not for the chief.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
And Councilor LaJoy, as you go through, could you just hit on all 7 of these so I can take in a little informal poll here? I think Ed's probably doing the same thing, and we can
We're gonna
maybe
have to
get
thumbs
somewhere
up
by
it,
the end of the
thumbs down
night.
it anyway.
I've got all of Kristen's already. I'm good with that one. I'll go back to you for the other 6.
Yeah, I mean, I just had an idea that I know one thing that helped when we geared up in code enforcement, that code enforcement position was in the budget to begin with. And my suggestion would be, as we move forward, is maybe look at positions like the battalion chief and the planner, or whatever, where we know we're going to need those eventually, to maybe roll those with more forcefulness to begin with, and how to kind of structure a budget around knowing those may be in place, rather than just additional positions. That's just a suggestion.
Certainly, the council, if it wishes, can direct us to include positions in the following year's budget proposal from the manager. I think that's what you're referring to with the code position.
Yeah, right.
There's no guarantee that when you see the
It's-
budget, you won't have a heart attack.
No, again, nothing's guaranteed, but I do
Right.
I think Mike wants to, we don't want to forget about this. I don't want to forget about the planning position. I don't have to remind anyone about the comprehensive plan that we've adopted and spent lots of money on it, and lots of resources in the community, lots of time. And we need to begin to implement that plan, and I think that's my biggest driver on needing a planner. So if we could do that for next year, best time right now, and I think the chief would agree about the battalion chief, but, sometimes we got to look at our expenses, and, maybe a year, we can wait. But I don't want to lose that thought either.
Councilor Cludier?
So just as we talk about, deferring things to next year, I want us to also, so are there things that are happening next year that, we see on the horizon that are going to cause us to be in a more difficult budget situation next year than we are right now? So, like 2 budgets ago, we were in a pretty good place, and it's kind of gotten, harder as time has gone on because the school budgets put us
revenue sharing.
So as we think about deferring things, I want us to be thinking about that too, because if we're going to be in a harder place next year and we're saying, oh yeah, we'll just defer to next year, we're not going to get to next year either, and I want us to be honest about that.
My general response is that life never gets easier.
Right.
That's not totally always true. Every once in a while, something changes. If the CMP project, for example, is approved and goes forward 2-3 years down the road, we may see a significant increase in assessed value because of that project. Short term, I'm not seeing anything that's going to dramatically change things. We certainly are still negotiating, obviously, with a couple of unions. We will be negotiating with fire again in the coming, for that budget year. So I'm not aware of any cliff that's out there, but I'm also not aware of any additional resources that we're going to be seeing, significant additional resources. There are some possibilities if we go ahead with rental registration, and if we adopt the kind of fee structure that is being talked about, that can produce some revenue. That may not directly fund another planner position, but it might fund a lead code person's position, which would dramatically further reduce the demands on the department director dealing with code issues. So I think there may be some things like that, but I would anticipate that next year when you see the budget, it's going to start somewhere between 50 cents and $1, and we'll be in the same boat working back down.
The only thing I would add to that is potentially the impact of debt service. We know the rate environment's going up, and we know we have some very expensive projects in the pipeline.
The other thing was, as we talk about, if we talk about delaying the planner position, over the course of the next year, I'd like us to sort of keep track of how we're doing in terms of implementation of the comp plan. So having a planner as head of the code department and possibly having that deputy director with significant planning experience, how that affects our implementation of the comp plan as opposed to having somebody who's been pretty code driven. And also having that person in the economic development office with Lincoln Misty, how that might also play into a more proactive planning.
That certainly is a possibility, and
We do have funds available to implement the comp plan, too.
Yes,
that-
but I feel like we've had funds available. The people in that department haven't necessarily had the time to
Right.
do that. And so if we have the funding and we have people who are more experienced in the planning piece, it may be that this year the comp plan gets moved ahead better than it has in the past. So if we defer that position, I'd like us to be keeping our eye on that. And there was one other thing, but I can't remember right now. So.
Okay, we'll go back, Councilor Joy, if you could hit those other 6 for me. Yes, no, or indifferent, just so my little chart here can get filled out and we can maybe move along.
Well, I agree with you on the majority of them, except for the battalion chief.
might be just as easy at this point to
Could go.
do the thumbs up, thumbs
Yeah.
down on each item.
Can we do middle thumbs or no?
You can do middle
I
thumb.
Do middle thumb.
I think we'll just let people talk for next. I think everyone has something they're passionate about, and
Okay.
I don't want to be here all night either, but. Councilor Lyson, I know
Yeah.
you opined on the planner. And the
again,
other 6.
I'm willing to kind of set that off for a year, and as well as the battalion chief to keep the rate in a reasonable set.
And the other 5 you're good with?
Yep.
Councilor Pettingill.
Outside the civil document server, 24 cents is too much, and the civil document server has the possibility of generating revenue, and I think it's a good step as far as our parking attitudes, and I think it'll put us in a good spot. But outside of that, I'm hard pressed to ask our taxpayers to stomach 24 cents.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Ray, let's come right down the line.
Okay, so very much for the temporary wages. Can I ask Heather where the 1,000 went? Did you say that before? I'm sorry.
Well, part of their temporary wages It looks like they still have a little bit of wiggle room.
Of reserve in there? Okay,
Yes.
great, thank you. So very much for that, very much for improving our elections. Contract plowing 4, fleet manager would get a middle thumb. Battalion chief, same thing. Document server, all 4. Planner gets a middle to down. And principal clerk, all the way thumbs up.
Okay. Counselor Bean.
I'm in favor also of the temporary wages. The contract plowing as well, not only are we saving in probably workers' comp, but also when we were at the meeting, we discussed this thoroughly, and the men who are older and wouldn't be doing the plowing would be doing things inside the buildings that have been neglected for years. They're going to find it's going to be a plus for the maintenance of the buildings and the parking lots. So I think we're going to save money on that. And fleet manager, I can give it a thumbs up. Battalion chief, that's a tough one, I don't want to say, but the 1 year, I guess we're pretty much all in agreement that we will wait a year and see what we can do. I'm the same as everyone else. Civil document server might generate some money, and the planner, again, push that back a year. The senior principal clerk is one that we discussed also during our meetings at Public Works, and it seems like it's really, really necessary because of the complexity of the system. So, so I'm with everyone else, not the battalion chief and not the planner. But hopefully, I don't know, we have to find out what it's going to be like, what it's going to look like without those two.
Yeah, so once we get through this, sorry,
It's
can
okay.
we get,
Please.
can we get a number back from you in terms of what the increase is? And then also what that looks like for like somebody who owns a $100,000 home and a,
Oh, yeah,
Yes, yeah.
that's easy.
Yeah, so that'll reduce the 24 cents, but it'd be nice to know how much, by how much, yeah.
Well, I think the,
Sorry, Mike. I
the
won't spill the beans yet, but go ahead.
beans, well, that was gonna be my first question, counting the beans. But that sort of just got addressed, trying to get to a number. And last I heard it was 12 and a half cents.
It would be 12 cents with what I propose,
What would
but
you
as we
propose?
know, unless one of you turns up sick, I don't get a vote.
Heather may have,
I think it's closer to 13.
I had 12 and a half, to be fair.
I had 13.7.
does that include the fleet manager?
no,
I'm sorry?
That does not include the fleet
doesn't
manager.
include the
That
fleet
did.
manager,
That
right?
did.
Yes, it did.
It
Oh,
was everything
Okay.
but the battalion.
So
and the
when
planner.
Mike's done, can you come back and tell us what you have?
Yes.
Thanks. Sorry.
Well, the arguments have been hashed and rehashed all the way through on all 7 items, and I was in full agreement after the mayor and the council president were done. Very solid arguments that we used in both presentations for what direction I think we need to go in. Putting the battalion chief and the planner on tap for next year would be a good move. Hopefully, the development department can do something about increasing our tax base so that these could just slide right into that increased revenue. And if we're at 14 cents, which is the high side, if I understand, that's less than 1% increase over last year's city-side rate, correct?
correct.
Yes.
So I'd have no problems at that point.
So what was in, what was out?
Out, battalion chief and planner.
What about, I thought we were saying the fleet manager, IT, or the civil document server was the
So,
balance.
so-
well, okay, just from what I gathered from everybody, it looks like, and with just a quick conversation with Alicia here, it looks like the planner and the battalion chief got 4 outs and everything else got at least 4 in. At this moment.
Including the fleet manager,
Yes.
IT.
That one was a close one, but Mike just knocked it over the edge.
Yeah, can you tell us what the difference is in having the fleet person in there and it not?
Yep.
So there was some cost savings there, right?
Right.
There was some offset, correct, Chief?
I think that brought it down to 12.
Yeah, we're using the net number of 50.
Right. That 50 is with the offset.
That's 2.5 cents.
Yes.
50's 2.5 cents.
Yeah,
So it's a difference of,
2.5 cents.
right, but so 13,
So it would take us down to,
13 to
Essentially
11?
11 cents.
11.2, yeah.
Or 13.5. 7.
So I guess, is there a target increase the council is kind of generally, now that I know what you're looking for positions that you're more passionate about versus, not that you're not passionate about all, but ones that reach a higher priority, is there a kind of target rate that you're looking for?
So I
Or
would ask two things before we go that far. One, how much do you believe that document server could potentially offset if we were at that 13 or the 11? How much? A
that's
penny,
some-
2 pennies?
that's something that I can work with the chief on and come back to you with.
That would be really helpful.
Yeah, that would be very helpful, but I would also add, it just seems the flavor of all of us, if we could start next year's budget with a planner and the battalion chief already included for us.
yeah, we can conclude something in the.
We may all cringe when we get the budget,
Right.
but at least start with it, and if the will
We
is to
can all,
cut it,
we can
cut it.
include in the budget resolve just a simple addition that we will include funding for a planner and a battalion chief in fiscal '20's budget.
And can I also say, if we decide to not go with the fleet manager, that we include that in that as well?
Sure.
And what, I guess, what I would like to see with those being included is that you actually call them out and remind us that we made that request next year, so that we're paying particular attention to those things.
That will happen automatically.
Yep.
Because when you see the budget,
Because
it'll
there,
say, you guys made me do
because
this.
the thing that's going to be different about that is that there will be some positions those 3 positions will be automatically included, and all the
Unless you
other
take them
position
out,
requests
correct.
will not be. And so I
Unless-
want to make sure that we're, there could be a position next year that's an emergency position.
Yep.
That's not included, and
I will, yes, I understand what you're saying. Well, we will definitely highlight that.
Yep.
Okay, I think we have our new budget mostly.
So, I'm sorry if I missed it. Was there a rate that you were kind of gravitating towards?
I'm comfortable in the 12, 13 range myself with these positions, knowing that I think we've strengthened some departments. And especially if there's a little bit of an offset for that civil document server, I'm more comfortable.
I love the 11, obviously, but, I'm comfortable with the 13. I would like to see what that offset looks like.
Okay.
And then, I do feel like there's still conversation to be had around the fleet manager position.
We can come back and show you the numbers with and without.
Great.
So you will see exactly the impact.
Counselor Pettingill, Marcotte, Ray, any target rate? Counselor Lyson?
I like the 11 rather than the 14.
Okay.
I'm not a fan of it going up. I know it's not an option to not have. But, yeah, 11, 12 is where it seems to be the sweet spot right now, so.
Okay.
Yeah, if I had my idea, this would be negative, but
I think we all would be.
We understand.
I think we're at a better place on the city side than I ever expected to begin with, so.
Good.
I'm happy.
And I will also, before I forget, this person right here to my left deserves a lot of credit for that, because she does all the heavy lifting on this. And
She'll find us a couple more cents.
Yeah.
Get us that fleet
Well,
manager and get us down to
why I
11.
asked what the target rate was.
Counselor Cludier?
So 2 things just to, that I'd like for us to have conversations about after we're done with the budget. Our cash requests and capital requests, and whether or not we want a policy on either of those things.
whether or not we want,
A policy
Policy.
on either of those things.
Counselor Marcotte?
I know it's in our packet, but it'd be probably nice if the finance director can go through the recommendation from the.
Yep, I'm working to that. If I could, real quick, on the fund balance items, just to kind of show you what has shifted, so you're aware of it and you know where we currently stand, because that will play a role when we start looking at the LCIP again. So I just want to do that. So as you recall, we were initially using $2,064,060. Some of the adjustments that we've had since then is $50,825 for Potvin Park funding has been shifted to CDBG. So that gets pulled out of our fund balance. Obviously, the work that we were going to do on the Violations Bureau has since been removed at the amount of $5,000. With those two subtractions, we have added in three components. One is the recreation van that we've talked about, the $35,000. The second one is the fire records management system for $10,108. And also the TCM, which is our content manager system that meshes with our Munis system that we do the fund accounting and everything else on. It allows us to do electronic records management for code enforcement and for general assistance, as well as kind of being a little bit more robust in the HR area to really start scanning and filing those documents. That has a significant price tag. That's $68,000, you know, to bring it in-house with that. So that brings our fund balance recommended purchases to $2,121,383. It leaves our fund balance at an amount of 12.09%. So we still have about $2.4 million before we get to that 10% that we said we weren't going to go below, which kind of leads us to Councilor Markot's.
But before we leave that, just, you know, please take one more look at this list and see if there's anything that you want to talk about some more information on, take off, if there's anything that you think of that we've missed that should be in here. Keeping in mind that every dollar we spend here is one less dollar that you have available looking at the bigger capital plan.
I have 1 and 2 questions. Can you restate that $2.1 million number again?
It's at the bottom there, $2,121,383.
Oh, okay. It's already
Yep.
state. Oh, okay, you were going through I thought that wasn't on the sheet.
Yep. And Councilor Cloutier, I also relabeled the Museum LA as Museum LA Site Plan Partnership.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So,
And the second thing, you mentioned software. Can we get an update on how eGov is working and not working?
Yes.
Because I've been hearing some horror stories.
eGov or InterGov?
Intergov.
Okay. Just to clarify, they're very similar, that's why I wanted to clarify.
The $300,000 software.
Yes.
Yes.
I would second that.
Okay.
And whether it's fully depreciated yet, because it's probably been longer than I expect that we've had it.
Probably, 6 years now?
Yes, and
5-year
we did
life.
not bond that.
No.
So there was no debt. So it's essentially a sunk cost. With technology right now, pretty much the target is a 3 to 5 year cap.
3 to
So
5,
if we're definitely down to that. I will say now that if we are willing to entertain that, the system, the proprietary software that the city uses for kind of everything now, we call it Munis, it's the Tyler Technology Suite, which is where that content manager is coming from. They have a different licensing software that I know we've talked about prior to the turnover in the MIS department, bringing that in and looking at a demo, because we will need to upgrade tax at some point. And it's probably going to be sooner rather than later. Tax billing.
Tax billing.
We are on an extremely antiquated system, and
One of the things that
It's
we're
very
hoping to
difficult
do,
to
as
get
you-
a system.
as you know, we're also going through a transition in MIS, and one of the things we're hoping to do in MIS is to get a much better handle on all of our software products and where they are in their life cycle,
Yeah.
so that we can start planning ahead so we don't, periodically, it seems like we've all, including me, been surprised when MIS pops up and says, oh, by the way, Outlook's going away next year, we have to come up with, we have to pay for the new package. So we want to just get a better handle on what we have, when we got it, what its status is, what we anticipate its life cycle to be, because eventually on most of these packages, someday they call you up and say, we're not going to support you anymore. So they force you to either upgrade or go to a new product. I will mention, by the way, that Tyler also has, since we went with Energov, Tyler has purchased Energov, and we need to find out what their plans are.
Yeah, my guess is they're sunsetting that.
Because they may, they either be sunsetting that, or they may be trying to combine the two best elements of two packages. We need to get a better handle on where that all stands. Energov is working, but we'll give you a more complete report. The big failure with Energov was the public portal never worked, which was an effort to get a system up and running where people could apply for permits online. That system never worked, never went live. Didn't pay for it either, but it's a real shortcoming, because a lot of that could take some of the burden off folks upstairs when people walk in.
So again, to echo the city administrator's review of the fund balance purchases, as you have time, if you have any questions, just shoot me an email and I can kind of send it out to everybody just to make sure everybody's comfortable with that. The last element that was kind of in that package is the recommendation from the Finance Committee. The chair could not be here tonight, and we wanted to get the recommendation to council as soon as possible. It was a theory, I guess, 2 councils ago, where getting the Finance Committee recommendation essentially the night that we're approving the budget doesn't really allow enough foresight to take their recommendation into consideration. So kind of, I won't read this verbatim, but just to kind of touch on some highlights. Obviously, they're still concerned about the LCIP funding requirement. They really want to prioritize and clearly put the public safety items and the current needs for new projects kind of at the top of the list, and anything that can be postponed that the city has not started endeavors on for future years. They want us to be vigilant on what we define as a capital asset, what labor is charged there, and make sure there's no supplies and so forth that are incorporated in the capitalization of the asset. Again, their sweet spot for the fund balance mirrors the council's desire at 10%.
I just wanted to add, that he should have added targeted floor, because it's 8 is the low, right?
Right.
By policy. So he meant to do that. Targeted floor minimum of 10%.
Yeah.
That's the target.
I can interject that for the final draft of this.
Great, thanks.
There is some concern about the bidding system and so forth because of the way we do budgets. You know, essentially the contractors know how much we're budgeting for projects, which may or may not put the city at a disadvantage. So they're encouraging, especially with the economy being so robust and we're getting limited bids responses, that they want to make sure that we maintain as much flexibility in our RFPs as possible, not only in time frame, scope, designs, and materials, to make sure, you know, as many bidders as possible can respond to our RFPs. With the housing stock, they recognize the efforts that's been made in code enforcement and fire for the inspection programs and so forth. They are supportive of a landlord registry program and would even recommend a 2-tier fee schedule for owner-occupied versus non-owner-occupied multi-use buildings.
Was there a vote on that?
The owner-occupied versus non?
No, on the landlord registration?
It was a consensus with all of the finance committees,
Consensus.
so.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. They are not recommending any cuts in staffing. However, they are encouraging, especially with the attrition we're seeing with retirements, to review job descriptions, processes, and so forth to make sure that we're using our labor and our positions effectively. And keeping in mind with contract negotiations that the fringe benefit package and the COLAs and so forth should be somewhat representative of what the private sector is getting. So there's not a significant disparity between that. And obviously, there's always the uncertainty from a state revenue sharing funding amount. Is nobody has that perfect crystal ball on that. So I think Councilor License and Councilor Marcotte, did I summarize that pretty cohesively?
To address the mayor's concern, there was a lot of give and take on this. The one paragraph that I probably would have preferred to see more take from was the paragraph you referred to on the rental agreement, but the language was stronger before the edits, so that's why I supported the packages in its entirety.
Okay.
Because I got movement on everything. Maybe not enough movement on that one, but more movement on the others to support it.
Thank you, Council. All right.
And the only other thing I'll mention is that I guess the legislature is scheduled to wrap up within the next 2 weeks. We'll see if that actually happens or not. There remains the potential that there may be some impacts there, either on the school funding side, or I get a little bit nervous not knowing what's going to come out of the tax conformity effort that's going on. That will affect state revenues, and again, it's going to be a matter of estimates. I'm not sure what kind of effect it's going to have, so there will remain some uncertainties, and I don't know if we'll have those things answered before or after we're ready to adopt our budget or not. We'll have to wait and see.
Councilor Cloutier.
So based upon where we landed tonight, when we come back on the 17th, we're getting the presentation of the school budget, is that correct?
That's correct, and my guess is, I think you had something else scheduled for the workshop that night, briefly.
Very briefly, yes, the mural issue.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't see us really talking about the city budget necessarily during that time period, but by that Thursday, I plan to bring back new sheets
we'll see
and
that on
kind
the
of
19th.
narrow it down to where we're really honing in on that. Okay, and so that's why, seriously, if anybody has any questions, particularly on the fund balance list, let me know.
You all set?
I'm all set, thank you.
All right. Workshop adjourned.